age of really with that means it's oversaturated like podcasting the rap scene. It's confusing whether you go in live or you zoom and can't be on the same page. So you read what the room thinks. The room thinks too many words, and every word is personal. And when it's in type, it's even worse. You misunderstood. It's just how it works. So I'm a hypocrite just like the rest of the earth. And racists think you hate them, so they gotta hate you first. Miscegenation is a crime, the melting pot is earned. They want us normal and ignorable, killing to burn. Sexism isn't a two-way street. Listen to her, and slut ain't got no use. It's an excuse for a slur. Don't blame it on the evil, it's just people you hurt. You get what you got, whether or not you deserve. Welcome to the Museum of Dead Words. I'm your tour guide, Dyalekt, alongside Pamela Capel, Kristen Crouch, and Andrew J. Scoville. We spent the last few years poring over conversations online to find words that kill discussions and ruin discourse. We dubbed these words dead and have been infiltrating art galleries, co-working spaces, cafes, and really anywhere we can get our hands on to share how these words die and why that matters. In the online series, we're spending a week with each word, with the Blueprints in Progress on Tuesdays, where we get deep into how a word dies, and on Thursdays, that's today, the main event, which is a collaboration with artists from around the world to share their experiences with these words. If you know a word or a phrase that has died or may be in danger, please share in the chat, DM, get on the Dead Word bucket at museumofdeadwords.com. Any way that you can reach me, find us. A little bit about the museum. We opened when your mouth stayed, and thanks to the generous contributions of millions of donors like you, we've been able to identify and catalog a growing list of words in the English language that have fallen into disuse. In this language, it's kind of hard to tell when a word has stopped working. Now, you might wonder why we're using rhymes to define these lines of these dieds who died. And you see, language doesn't really mean anything until we give it power by infusing it with rhythm and tone. Some of these words, they take a long time to die, and it gets a little bit dangerous. This word that we're talking about this week, deserve, lived on the edge as a snarky synonym, but it kind of lost the plot. Our artist that we're rocking with today is, let me pull up his thing that I want to tell you about. Excuse me a minute earlier. I forgot to tell heads. So the camera thing was not working. I was just going through the beginning of the intro spiel. Camera's not working in the beginning. Work that out. We'll be doing the intro rap. I hope you're still getting the audio from that. Our next artist, José Trejo-Maya, is from Guanajuato, Mexico, and has spent his childhood in a small rural pueblo in Tarimoro. Messing up my R's and my M's. Tarimoro, where he immigrated to in 1998. He's a 2020 Jack Straw Writers Program Fellow. He says, while in ceremony with Chololo Medicine Man in the Tule River Reservation, he dreamt of this written prophecy. He says that he is a remnant of the Nahuatl and a tradition, and their oral tradition. Freaking all kinds of things up. I'm a remnant of the Nahuatl oral tradition and a commoner from the lowlands from a time and place that no longer exists. I'd like you to check out his work. What it's going to be is it's poetry that also has dimension to it. So we have a video that we're going to show you, and I'm going to read his poetry in English, Spanish, and Nahuatl. I am not very versed in Nahuatl, and I'll let y'all know that this is not a first run. I'm not reading this cold. This is more of a second run, but we wanted to get through the language and see the ways that he shaped it, if that has anything to do with the things that he's saying. So check this out. This video will show while I drop a little bit of the sound from the flow. Words last with silence. Lightning in the braids, that's poetic extreme. All I got is the ink to bleed. Like crows refract black pearls glare sheen in, or ruby-throated hummingbirds, razor-sharp flights iridescent, ghost haunt plains. Atonali, one's shadows, spirit, soul. Spirit helpers are the essence one breathes. Tetzcatlipoca, mirror smoking, as writing this blue lightning inside. The Tezbacali, Inipi, sweat lodge ceremony. Next to the ashes, singers, ceniza in the memories, blare voices, coalesce rainbows of flowers and how thoughts bright as sunrise burn. Tawiz Kalpa first light dawn breaks past the meridians. Shamans cross parallels, ethereal atemporal showers of meteors in the jade iris glare, silent shards, languages. We do not all see the same. In Xochitl, in Cuica, Flor y Canto, flower and song inscribed in the Dictionary. In the poolside clips, these words here written before the cursors and screens, blurred peripheral incisions in the visual cortex. In three more words, bring back ghosts. Here, hidden, I. José. We heard the lessons. You can feel the steel weight in these words, peripheral incisions. I coded it. So when it comes, you gotta be ready. Tresina se Kiyowaro, that is tenacity. Period of Tepuwi Tauntly, our Utose Waddle, woman of the salt dunes, blue and white, thunder in the night skies, how calendars override, gaps in the space-time continue. Today's a cut Tepuwi Tauntly, now we tech properties, the fluidness in how ethereal entities survive our glass. Silence cuts what you're thinking, edged hieroglyphics that lay in the mental picture are transcribing into ocean breeze, energies in the optical cortex, streaked in between dreams, weaved in the carbon 14 frame as pure mid-shift here, melanin to melanin, arctic earth infused. Peasants in the fields tend the harvest, eyes color of sun, stars, truck glare in the iris. Sinaloa respira en estos triángulos, que realiza la memoria de obsidiana. Shattered green volcanic rocks in the green. Streams flowing extemporaneously, breathing betwixt clandestino y desaparecido. Mind form cuts to the essence. Omnipresent, our feathers in the full moon stare. Breath ice, sickles carved into the deep. Song and stories thread these words as constellations. Awake and see what Panquisian ceremonies distilled flowers, istihilo bears, poems semblance in what you see in the tidal desert sands, retina dust light. So this was already written in the skies. Material realms engulf these even still teal words after shockwaves crowd these cloud shards of loud hours. Thunder and lightning in the mind stream. Heyoka thunder dreamers bequeath blue flashes of electricity in the poetic wind. Caloric currents you can't see. Players in the skin turn shade sundown. Fractured visual resonance on how thought waking to life. Mystery lodge inscribed in the DNA. Our material waves in symmetrical camera different shades of carbon. Frame. Shine beams on thin sinews that breathe in what you see. Visual cortex shifts words, symbols, and depths. Crystalline pools refract rainbows shaded into songs, stories, bleed. Still hold ceremonies clutched in memories. Rules, Tezcatlipoca, Iskamini, how poetry breathes. Eclipse, space-time continuum, ever-present in mind's reservoirs presence. Lightning, in the Inipi sweat lodge ceremony, coded in Lakota lexicon molecular, streaked into the semblance, earth-infused voices, ghost answers and seers, words retrieved from planets. Remember still they're working in the night. Albuquerque Ayasim, Matlakti Oren, Tipawidal Nawi Tempa. Got stars you can't see. Daddy's stream. Two hawks stealthy imprints with the DNA shard of the carbon. Conch shell moons, written spoken words spilled towards you and don't mean nothing. Got sage, medicine, red face pain, and size in the semblance, just like dreams infused in the melanin. Lightning strikes in the brains. High eagles, skinny pawn, even still remember, still stars, constellations are guiding these meditations. Chinawe, touch steadily, it's Kiji, now we tempa. In the last 18th cycle, Xochitl, Chachu Clickway. So, transposing thoughts, kicks off feathers, skirted jade dreams, run space narrows. It braces flows into a codex written in stone. La piedra del sol radica en la mente. White parchment edged in the hieroglyphic jade soul flops. Glimmerings carved in the spirit essence. 405 elements and ethereal entities here, shard words. They are obsidian, Dyalekt blades reaching back to other realms inside thoughts, glare, fire, and multi-dimensional deities guide, guard. In the pulse of the heart, ancestors are streamed in the visual cortex. It's easy. The darkened-eyed scribe with blinds deciphering that heart. You see the hieroglyphics delay weaved in words, reading desert sands, shift, merely breathing, sifting, shores, streaked betwixt aura presence, Dyalekt thunder and dreams so precise, whirlpools are building in thoughts of another time. So this was weaved from dreams, lightning in the braids, aura presence brings spirits together, waters seeps into other realms at levels. Poetry bleeds into every breath you take. Language extracts a segment of the immaterial essence. Multiple obsidian words, crafts harmony, purposes. Right now, one can viscerally feel the presence. I cut deep between shadows and blizzards and suns. Ceremony transposes the soul like stars shine in the red shift to the origin of observable universe. So the need extrapolates infinity or inexorably pinpoints to an infinitesimal where atoms meld into spiritual ether. Where Kodo represents the psychological ability to perceive intuitively forces that shape what you see, or Iskidizi, where elders remain in physical proclivity of endurance. So the poetics is turning illustrative in what you will see at the end of this page. Concrete imagery. Visual cortex sharpens its acumen. Heart of the sky, Tepe Yoloti, cloud. There are forces gathered within and outside the clouds together. Lightning strikes the Dyalekt glass of snow. Shiknawe Koto, Tlao So Shimako, Maki Kali breaks into other modes of perception. In that, the poetry sheathes light from outside the space-time continuum, jade, gleam, shard, thoughts, and mirror images, fluidity, as spider's web shades the iris, and waves in symmetrical shifts, offsets, hummingbirds, electricity, and the full moon simultaneously is forming in the mind streams of a time and place that escapes the hourglass and quicksands how every breath is cutting you right now. Like optics, scribe to the rhinestone ain't merely lyricist poetics, it's what keeps the cycle realm enclosed in the melanin bronze steel omnipresent sea. Intuition strikes streaks to the heart of these words, shattering to life. Star-struck memories of Usmal or Balana, Nina, Esperanto, Rita, Mexico, Vedic, Merce, Esquacho, Esquinas, Pepel, meditate, and you will see dreams meld into reality lives herein. Suns are cut into the iris glare, so soon keep my thoughts to every letter written. So it is, there are poltergeists hidden within the world. One is nature, and striking light. Like desert sands are shifting here, and what you can't see what's written. It stands outside religion. One could only bleed in this the heart of the Indian sweat lodge ceremony, and 16 mysteries arise of a teaching ingrained in the earth. And stardust in the DNA cyclones and the memories glare infinity, vast cameras of difference. And those are the works of José Trejo-Maya, Yeah, I have somebody helping me get all the stuff together. I want to show you. Yeah, yeah. So we're going to show you here in the side. These are the physical manifestations of the pieces. If you didn't get all that through for the video, just want you to understand the shapes that we got going on. You see the shapes, huh? Mm-hmm. The shapes. The last one there, in the shape of the M. And so now we're going to get into the fun part of today, what we do on Thursdays, well, Fridays today, actually, our makeup day since the storm got rid of all the internet going on. We have our interview with José Trejo-Maya. So check that out. It's been previously recorded, so I'm going to bring it up on the share screen, and then we're going to do our thing. That's right, and you're going to take your little behind to sleep.
Something like it can't really be explained because.
Hold on, let me make sure I'm doing this right for y'all. Share screen. Tab, doing that. Make sure we got the audio going on. Bam. Now check out this interview.
We were invited to a ceremony with
Okay, thanks y'all. This is Jose Trejo-Maya. This is the artist that put together the works that I was just spitting some of the pieces from, and that created not only the text for it, but also the visual for it. I love how we also had this with Clara in our first week, where there was text in the art and the text actually made the images. Thank you, and welcome, Jose. Thank you for sharing your art and being a part of this. We really appreciate it. First of all, let's talk a little bit about you. I want about you. Where your art came from, why you started deciding to make art, and what it's important for you to make art about.
yeah. Actually, it's been just in it all started like around 2003, I think. Now looking back, like 2003, I was in undergrad university here, a Polytechnic University here in California, Southern California, and I found a copy of the Sunstone calendar, like the original primary source. And from there, from that time, I already had been interested of like the roots of like my where I'm from, right? Like I'm from the lowlands of Mexico, and then that's where like we're like 2 hours away from Mexico City. So it just in terms of reading and literature and my background, I was always interested in like knowing things about like where I'm from or like the history of the people that I'm connected to, that I know of like my origin and everything like that. So actually, I can say that when in like 2003, when I found that book, like that it sparked like an idea inside of me in the sense of like learning, like knowing about myself, like our people, because I never really like paid any attention or believed anything that was like espoused in the media. Like that was really superficial to me in terms of what people said about Mexicans, in terms of the politics and the reasons why people migrate or why we're here. So I was in another right now I'm currently at Jack Strawfellow in Seattle, and the coordinator there, she asked me like where did your stuff come from? Like how did it all originate? And I was telling her that I have like a unique perspective because I was a migrant over here. So like when I was a kid, I was always like in the median, in the sense of like in the median place. Because when we came over here, I was seen as an outsider in terms of being a migrant in Los Angeles or in California. But was really interesting, and like I've been going, I was born, and like I'm an outsider over there too. So like I read all the history, like people, like indigenous background from my mom's side, and then like it was so interesting because in like around that time, like later on in 2004, while at the university, I met some people because I was always part of like the minority groups. Like it was what was it called? it was like an Aztec dance group. And from there, I was connected to my friend, like I've known him now for that long, Tony. And he's the one that, how you mentioned, like he sparked everything in the sense of like when I went to go visit him, like a lot of things dawned on me in terms of like I'm really like a traditional person, just in a lot of really in my lifestyle the way that I am. And then when I went to go meet him around that time, it was like 2004, and he's really traditional. So this is where it goes to the question you had mentioned that he had been adopted by the Lakota people from South Dakota,
Yeah.
and they have given him like they call it the sacred fire. So the elders from the Pine Ridge Reservation, they invited him to the ceremony because he's from Chihuahua. He's like Mexican like me. But I've noticed that we have like a lot of similitude in terms of like a lot of the tribes from this side, and then a lot of the native peoples from Mexico. There's a lot of similitude. And so when he told me the story. So he's been running the ceremony he lives in San Pedro here in California for like 40 years, more than like 70, since like 74, more like around that time. And there was turbulence during that time, like the social turbulence, kind of near to what's happening now. So
Mm-hmm.
when I went to go meet him, like it was like a holy environment. It was a really like pivotal moment in my life because when I went to his house, like it reminded me of where I'm from, like what people do in terms of the homeliness of the place. So he's really traditional. So the Lakota people from Ogo Looking Horse, that's an elder that he kept the ceremonies. Like a lot of them, they're traditional and they keep all the sequence of all the ceremonies. So the way I tied all this together is from meeting him and doing all these things like ceremonial things. And then Sunstone calendar. It's called the Popoali. I've been reading it so long for like 2 decades that it was only natural that all of my art would be like a refraction of all that. So everything that you see in my like my art, like my like language poetry, um, it deals with that. It deals like that type of like background, like the histories of it, and like the oral tradition. So I had a very it was something like it can't really be explained because we were invited to a ceremony with the Chololo, the Tule River. We went to a reservation. It was in this like Tulares in Northern California. So we went to their ceremony. It was like a bear ceremony. It was like in the solstice. And when that ceremony happened, looking forward, like in the future, like it prophesized everything because when I was there, like we had a ceremony. There was a bear ceremony, and what they do usually, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but a lot of the tribes from all the like all the northern states, even California and like all the like country and like the continental United States, the ceremonies are the same mostly. All it that's different is the language that they use and some of the specifics of like the sacred items that they have. So when we're invited to the bear ceremony, it was a seminal moment in my life because like I'm not sure if what I saw was real or if it was like a dream. And so I go delve into that in my poetry a lot because I get what I do is that like everything that I write is like it comes from dreams. So like these dreams come to me. And so the uniqueness of that event was that they were having a sweat lodge. Like after the bear ceremony, they would do sweat lodges in the morning and at night. And one of them, it was like the their reservation is on top of a mountain. It's in the Tule River, Tulare, in Northern California. And I'm not sure if like after one of the ceremonies, like I had a vision. There was like and I have it on there. I think one of the clips that I sent, it has that image of a Yaqui deer dancer. And he was
Yeah.
that when I got out of the sweat, he was super long. Like he was standing next to me. He was like 6 feet, and then he had like the deer antler, the deer head in his like on top of his head. and he had his head covered, like his you couldn't see like his face. So looking back, like um, I can ascertain if I really saw him, like if he was really there, or it was like a waking dream. And in one of the when I finished my MFA in LA, like somebody asked me like when did everything start? They asked me like when like the question you just posed, like when did your like what was the origin of your writing? Like where did it start? And I think like putting um putting a moment on it, it was that moment when I had that like that vision. Because afterwards I would have dreams of like things that I would do like before they happened. And I can say when that happened, the idea like dawned on me in terms of the writing. I would be writing everything like mostly like diary type of stuff. But that's when it sparked everything and like that's where the poetry started. And something that I noticed that my two favorite authors are James Welsh. He wrote Winter in the Blood. And then there's another one, Juan Rulfo. He wrote El Llano y Llamas, which is the Plains and Flames. And those books are really like pivotal because I synthesize what they say, like the existence or the what like an indigenous person feels. That's why I like their poetry because their poetry is like their writing is not like political. It just gets to the root of like the sentiment of an indigenous person perspective because what they talk about is like it's like a sense of loss and belonging. So when like when I read those books and then I read like our ancestors, like how in the Popoali, like the calendar, it's so exact. Like that if I read it for so long that I've studied it, that everything that you look in my poetry is tied to the calendar because every time that I read something or I wrote, the calendar was embedded in there. And that's actually the title of like my exhibit that I've gone to prove. Like in you guys gave me that pivotal moment where like the approval of you guys is looking at my work and having like a sense of like similitude. Like it was like a watershed moment because now like I sent it everywhere and I already got approved like in like a lot of places. Like I got approved in New York, Seattle, California. And then I've done like I moved forward where like I've done it like international now. So and you giving me that like that step to move forward in terms of the writer. Um, I already had like another idea. I'm working on like book, a video book, and I already have everything like all the I have everything like all the manuscript is like 5 notebooks. And now I've noticed that when I put stuff on the computer, like the transparency, the idea that I got about the exhibit, it's a different type of entity. But now what I'm doing is I'm gonna leave it original. Like I'm just gonna videotape the notebooks. I'm not gonna put it in the computer. Like it'll give it a different feel.
I really like all of the stuff. You keep saying all this really great stuff about origins of things. Just for now, when you're saying about like using the original notebook and filming that and the power inherent in that, and you were talking about how like in the very beginning of this, finding an original primary source. Which, you know, when you look at a lot of times you're talking about like media portrayals of Mexicans in America, a lot of times when you're talking about international media portrayals, it's like third, fourth hand at best. And a lot of your stuff about origins and where things come from really gets me. I mean, I love your thing about dreams. The song, Elwood song that is it's actually an older song. I wrote this a long time ago. It came to be in a dream too. And your whole thing about primary sources. One thing that messed me up just now is when you started talking about traditions. And in my research and stuff that I've been doing on words, tradition often means this is an old thing that I've decided is right. It's like the binary of tradition is either this is right or this is wrong. And there's a lot of people who hold on to tradition because it gives them a moral compass. But the type of tradition that you've talked about and the definition of tradition that you talked about in this is here is someone who understands my primary source. Like when you said when you went to homie's house and he was traditional and he had the traditions, so you were able to make a clear communicative connection. So rather than the binary being this is good or this is bad, the binary was if you see this tradition, you know that I have primary source, or you know that I don't have the primary source, because if I'm maintaining this tradition, all of the ducks are in a row. If I'm not, then me being someone from that tradition, I would know it's different. And that was really fascinating about the way that we could get the idea of traditions and how that allows us to understand the history of who we are and our shared history of the people that we're around. And the real of it is like what you really just pulled together, which messed my whole mind up, is you were talking earlier about the oral traditions, right? And how these are the ones that have been passed down, or the kind of like secret code that like let you know that you know and I know. And in your work, you've been taking a lot of the stuff from this and the inspiration from this and been writing it down and finding the different ways that the written word can connect to this traditional spoken word through the transparencies, through filming it, through shaping images out of the words. I thought that that part is really powerful and important. And I want to take this a little bit more towards what we're doing here in the museum and talk about um, your work with this piece and your thoughts and what you dug into around the word deserve.
Yes, and I actually brought it up where I think it's innate in the sense of like if we follow the continuum of the oral tradition, like we all deserve in the sense of like we're all like living entity, and where we're standing, that's what we deserved in the sense of like that's where we brought from our ancestors, I think, and I'm really it's very humbling because what's unique in the sense of just my family history, like my parents never went to school. And where I'm from, like education is not what you receive in a classroom or like a piece of paper that validates you as a person. Where like my parents were really humble because my mom never went to school and she raised like four of us to like adults. And my dad, he never went to school because where we're from, like your own life is your experience. And in terms of the word deserve, like it's all tied to it because what I've understood was that what I gathered from my dad is and his grandparents is that like we all deserve what we have in the sense of, and this has nothing to do like with your wealth or your money or like the material things you may have. It has to do like with the morality. When I was really struck what you said in the sense of like the moral compass, that's the essence of the tradition because we're really like steadfast to them because I bring it up in my poetry a lot too that a lot of the languages are dying. So like when we bring back the language, like we bring back the people, and when we bring back the history, and the the it was so keen where you guys gave me that word because like everything that I've done, I've deserved it because I lived everything that I wrote down. Like I brought it up in another on the Jack Straw, they interviewed me, and I mentioned this that like what I do, like it's not for fun, you know. Like I don't do this as an academic gig. I don't do it to get money. Like I don't do it for any of those reasons. Like I do it to show the youth that like it's important. It's important to be proud of where they're from and to like venerate their ancestors wherever they're from. It doesn't matter if you're from Eastern Europe or you're from the Congo or from like wherever country you're from. Those are your ancestors, you know, and they all the people. This is what I've learned, like in my whole life, where I was in it was like 2006. I was there in my friend's house, Tony's house. We went to a ceremony and there was a sweat, and it was so like I can't explain it in words. Like you could see it in my poetry because I talk about a lot of like visceral things that like you could see. because my poetry is not sentimental, it's not political, it's not racial, like none of that stuff. So in that moment, I was in a ceremony and there was elders from like New York. There was like Cayuga, there was Quechua, there was people from there was elders from like Africa. They were all inside the circle. And when I was there in that moment, like I'm not sure if that's happened to you, but like poetry, it takes you to other realms. And me being in the ceremonies, like you get into other realms because like you see things that I try to explain them in the poetry, but if you weren't in there in the circle, I don't think you'd be able to feel them. And in that ceremony, it was like a 6 hour ceremony, and then there was some elders from the Iroquois Confederacy from New York, and then there was some elders from they were from Peru, I think. They were from Quechua and Aymara, and then there was some elders from I think Nigeria, because they're really steadfast, like what their traditions are. And I think that it was so poignant that you guys gave me that word deserve because that word, what it means is that in Spanish it means merecer. So what that means is that you have to study, like you have to like I don't educate nobody, like I don't have to teach anybody anything because you if you only know what you have read. So I'm from the stance that like me as a person, I'm not really that important. Like what's important is the tradition and to follow it through and to let the youth know, like in the exhibit that I'm working on, it's the one that I sent to you guys, but it's on a broader scale. Like I want to tell the youth that it's important, that their lives are important, and that the root of my exhibition is literacy. Like I want to give the youth the tools or give them like an example. The literacy is important because that's why I'm moving away a little bit right now from writing stuff on computers. Like I'm moving it away where like making it more like real. Like how could I say this? Like I'm the type of person that like I don't like being on the phone, I don't like being on the computer. But since that's the mode that we have right now, that's the one that I'm gonna work with. So like what I learned from like all these elders that I know that like in ceremonies that I've been in, like my poetry is really visceral. Like I don't talk about like sentimentality or romanticism. I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about religion. Like what I talk about is like everything that I've seen and that I felt like in my person, like as a regular person. So like when you guys gave me that word, like it was like it brought everything together. Like it was so it was like such an interesting moment because like that's where it sparked like all these ideas that I have now. Because like we, like all of us, it doesn't matter. That's what I come to learn now. Like being so close to the traditions of the people that I know, I have gotten appreciation for other people and like where they're from and whatever like their people do or their grandparents do. Like I feel more attuned. That's why I tend to step away a lot from politics because what politics does it differentiates everybody. Like everybody gets like categorized into something else. So
Yeah.
me as a person, I don't really do that. Like I don't tell the people anybody. Like I have like a certain steadfastness to what I do and what I know and the people I know, but I also have anonymity, right? Like I don't espouse these people that they're not gonna understand them and they're gonna be prejudiced by it for it. So like that's really like what I thought like like being in touch with the elders and everything like that has given me like a broader perspective because like I've been doing my exhibits for so long, for like a decade, and they've never gotten approved. Like I would publish my stuff like here in the state, but they would never publish it. But what that gave me was like I work like what I deserve is like what I got and what I know, and I give myself like my things like my poetry. like I'm not doing this as a monetary vehicle. Like I'm doing it because I want to let the youth know like that they're important. Like that reading reading gives you the capacity to expand your mind, to like to go to go into like the thing that I said about being in another realm. So
Well,
to
and
answer
what you're saying about the language too, I think it's also like I want to say this again. When we bring back the language, we bring back the people, right? And being
right,
able to engage with
that's
those
really
things is so
yeah.
important. It's like excuse me a second, but when we were starting the museum, I think in our second week, when we talked about the word racism, and we talked about when the first time the word racism was written down was by the gentleman. I'm not going to say his name, forget that asshole. But it's the gentleman who came up with the phrase that save the Indian, kill the Indian in the man, save the man, kill the Indian. And he started these indoctrination schools where he brought native kids into schools in Pennsylvania where they had their culture stripped away from them, they had that taken away from them. And a lot of people, when we share that with people, they're like, "Oh, well, that's not that important. Really, is it that important?" When people talk about language, language is so important, not just to culture, but to like understanding who you are. You keep talking about verisimilitude, which I think is a wonderful, powerful word that really means real, recognize real. And that's the thing of it that language has to do. When people talk about like Semitic peoples and are you anti-Semite and all that, I know this from being Jewish. My father is Jewish. Uh, Semitic is a type of language, the Semitic languages. And, a Semitic language is a way of people connecting through the languages we speak. My wife was born in the Philippines and was raised in America, where her parents were afraid to speak their native language, Tagalog, at home because they were afraid of how you speak English. I've been noticing, because it's in your poetry, but it's also just in your natural speech. The rhythm of the word seems to be the thing that leads to your word choice. Um, you
Correct.
like you've been saying, like, each time we've been having a conversation, rather than saying I got this, you say I ascertained this. And not saying that ascertained is a smarter, better word because it's longer. It's just more syllabically fun. It's more interesting in the way that it bounces around. And that is such a clear explanation of who you are as a person. Just even with us speaking the same language, the syllables that you choose and the words that you choose and the rhythm of all that creates who it is that you are. So I really love and wanted to highlight all of those things about the rhythm, speech, and language. And tell me more about why these things are important to you, because they clearly are in all the work that you're doing. And I want to hear more of your perspective on it because it's been really cool.
I actually you're hitting on like the central axis of like what I do because like I'm a really humble person. Like I really like I learned this from my dad because he was a farm worker. He was like a bracero. He was like a migrant in the 40s and third like 40s and 50s. And what I learned from him is that you don't speak until somebody asks you a question or when they ask you to speak. So like you don't mix your words. Like you say what it is and that's what it is. So like you have to have and he taught me this because later on in his life he lived a long time. Like he lived to be 80, but like his physical body just broke down. But what I learned from him is that like he had the mental fortitude and like the spiritual insight to be like a sage in the sense of like he never told anybody anything. He would never sermonize, he wouldn't talk about religion. He told me once that like religion is your reaction to life. Whatever your religion is, that's what your reaction to life would be. Because it's really like it's beyond like I brought this up in the other on the other thing that I'm doing over here at the Jack Spell Center. They asked me like I told them like I don't need to teach anybody anything because you could only know how far you have read and you could only know what your vantage point is and that's important. So what I do is like I like to read like um and when I read like I read everything. Like it's so interesting you brought up your background. My brother he studies the Kabbalah,
Mm-hmm.
like the sword. He studies the sword, which is the ancient like from where your people are from. It's Aramaic, that's like the most ancient language that there is.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from like probably I would say Sanskrit or some of the ancient languages. And
Languages.
I emphasize this a lot because like language is the root of everything. So when I talk about in my poetry, like language, that's what brings life to everything. And in every language it has its own origin story. So what I mean like the way that I talk, it's just from the stuff I read,
Mm-hmm.
like it's not, and I can talk in different registers with like different languages that I know with different people, and that just brings me up to be like a regular person. Like I brought this up to them too, like at the Jack Straw because they interviewed me for a vocal training.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I do when I write or when I read or like I recorded all my like poetry, all my manuscripts. I recorded them, and when I listen to them, what I try to ascertain is like what was the spiritual phase that I was at when I wrote them. That's where I can't gauge it right now because everything is a momentality. Like in the Hagakure, in the book of the samurais, it states that everything's just a moment. All we can do is live the present moment because everything is a momentality, everything is a moment by moment. And what I find is that like I'm not able to gauge like that the momentality of like how I was able to even do all that already, like all the manuscripts that and I think it has to do with like it's a certain spirituality in my work that it has nothing to do with like any region or any place or any like background or anything like that. So what I'm doing is that I'm just really like a humble person, really. Like if somebody asks me something, I'll talk. Like if I don't need to say anything, I won't say anything. So I can say stuff like that, and like you can see it in my poetry too.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I know those. It's such an interesting paradigm that we as artists put ourselves in. I feel like we've been talking for a little good bit. We should probably wrap up, but I want to get this last piece out of you. You keep talking about you being humble and you not being so important, but wanting to let the youth know that they're important. And it's such an interesting thing when we talk about the word deserve, because I know a lot of us people who are creators, who are healers, who are educators, we often sometimes become martyrs where we want good things for other people, but can't bring it up to ask for good things for yourself. Um, what does it take for these artists, these creators, these healers, and I'm even honestly being real for real, talking about you and me, to see ourselves as important so that we can model that for the people we want to see things to be important? Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think what I can say is that being like being a bridge, like in terms of like literacy,
Yeah.
in terms of like giving freely to other people. So I've actually done that where like I've known people because the people that I know, like they're like in a different strata, like if you read Franz Fanon, like the red shit of
Mm-hmm.
the earth, like that's where you find a lot of like the jewels of the because like what happens is that in the society that we're in, we're naturally segregated by monetary like stratas and stuff like that. But what I can tell you is that like what I give like the youth like acknowledgement, like I acknowledge them where they're standing. Like they can't have like they can't see what I've seen because like everything's moving forward, like society and everybody as a people, like we're all moving, like technologically, socially, like spiritually. All we can do is like be a bridge to them and acknowledge people, like everybody. So what I do is like I get along, like I meet people, like I acknowledge people. Like right now when I was coming to read your to do the Zoom meeting right now, there's a friend of mine. He's like he lives in the street. He's homeless and he's always on the side of the freeway asking for money. And I went to the laundromat yesterday and I always talk to him. Like his shopping cart where he has all his belongings, like somebody tipped that over and everything fell over. So I always talk to people. Like I talk to everybody because we're all spiritual beings. Like we're all like just living the physical experience where we are, but we're all physical beings. It doesn't matter like if you're the president, if you're a senator, if you're homeless, if you're a veteran, like we're all people. And I think what we can do, you and me as artists, is to acknowledge people, like to give them fortitude for the work that they have, like to give them a sense of like that it doesn't really matter like how much money you have because we're all gonna meet the same end. It's not about like how much you have, but like how much can you give back? Like how much, like how can you uplift a person? How can you uplift their soul? Like because I don't need a house, I don't need a car, I don't need all these material things. So like where I'm from, like that's what I was like taught. Like you don't measure a person by their wealth. You measure a person by what they can give back or how they can share what they've learned. So like I want like my end game, like my sole reason that my like I'm exposing all my poetry now and disseminating like globally is I want to let all the youth especially know that they're important. That if maybe like they won't read my work, like they won't read my exhibitions or they won't watch my videos, whatever. That doesn't matter, but maybe I could give them something, like from them looking at my like my exhibitions and my poetry, and they get an idea from it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
I get what you're saying. Well, the thing you said about being a bridge, I think that makes me understand really where you come from with the idea of it, because it's like what you said is to acknowledge people. You know, as artists, I agree. Our job is to acknowledge people, to see where they're at, see where they're standing, be humble, lay down, be a bridge. If you're a bridge, some people are going to walk over your back, and that might hurt a little bit, but they're also the same people that will pick you up as you continue on, because verisimilitude, real, recognized real.
that's great.
Jose Trejo-Maya, thank you so much for being here with me and sharing and being part of this museum.
Thank you, Dyalekt.
And that's our perspective on deserve, an interesting word that was valued for its flexibility, but quickly lost the plot. And when it lost the plot, then, well, it doesn't matter what you deserve, what you work for, what you earn, you get what you got. Thank you for being a part of this with us with the Museum of Dead Words. Come check out Kristen with the epitaphs on Sunday. And next week, our word will be obvious slash obviously, where if we get what we get, even if we don't deserve it, then the obvious will be, well, I guess you already know. Okay, for next time. Peace.